I have broke. I admit that. In the pilot, he says, is this pillow made of rocks? He literally is tossing and turning. He takes the duvet cover and twirls around like he's a burrito. And I am trying to just say, is it your tummy?
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and welcome to Obsessed, the podcast where we talk about everything that's unmissable in TV, movies, and pop culture. Today on the show, I'm going to be talking to our entertainment critic, Nick Schager, about my unmissable show of the week, The Chair Company, starring Tim Robinson and Lake Bell. And a little bit later, I am going to be talking to the Lake Bell about her role on that show, along with that time she auditioned for Woody Allen, and a very deeply embarrassing story about her and Meryl Streep. So now let's get into it. This is Obsessed, the podcast. All right, now we are going to be joined by my friend, the Daily Beast Obsessed Chief Entertainment Critic, Nick Schager. Nick, are you Chief Entertainment Critic, or did I give you an extra title there?
Hey, Matt, you have given me an extra title, but I'm happy to take any and all titles that make me sound even more important. So chief, lead, whatever you got for me.
Well, you are very important, Nick. First of all, you see everything. So, you've seen everything that there is to see, as far as I know. So maybe before we get into our conversation today about what I want to talk about, what's the last great thing you've seen, Nick? Is there anything that you've seen that you just that you want to shout out or recommend?
I do, although it's not out yet. It's coming out in a couple of weeks. So this is
you get to see everything before everybody else.
This is a sneak preview, which is Baz Luhrmann made Elvis a couple of years ago, and the biopic, and he has an IMAX documentary coming out, a concert film called EPIC, which is an acronym for Elvis Presley in Concert, which is out in February, and it is unbelievably good.
Really?
I am not the biggest Elvis fan in the world. I like Elvis. I'm not even the biggest Baz Luhrmann fan in the world, but the concert film is fantastic. It just is an overwhelming experience, especially in IMAX. It's culled from a lot of outtakes from a couple of other concert films, and it just knocks your socks off. In the screening I was in, people were applauding, cheering. One person was even recording the screen.
Wow, yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, no, it wasn't cool. Obviously, somebody had to come in and tell them no.
Yeah, that person was immediately arrested.
That's right. But no, it's really great. So people should keep an eye out for that. It's one of the great movie-going experiences I've had recently.
All right, well, Nick, the reason I brought you here today is to talk about my personal unmissable show of the week, The Chair Company.
Yeah, it's one of my unmissables as well. It's one of the best comedies, I think, of the last year. And as you also agree, I know, Tim Robinson is one of comedy's real bright lights these days. So I think The Chair Company is one everybody should be checking out.
Yeah. When did you first encounter the comedy of Tim Robinson? Because I know, like me, you're a Tim Robinson guy.
I am a Tim Robinson guy, and I have to give credit to my kids who actually were on the cutting edge of this even before I was.
Your kids beat you to Tim Robinson. That's pretty cool.
They did, because, the first season of I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson wasn't something that was highly touted necessarily before it dropped on Netflix.
Yeah, it was a surprise, right?
It was, yeah. It sort of built word of mouth. And, once they clued me into the show, I then remembered that he had been on Saturday Night Live for a little bit and recognized him more, but it was really there that it began. And I mean, as you know, over the next couple of seasons, he's become, a real sort of cult comedy icon. And I just can't get enough of him. I think he's hilarious. I love Friendship. I love The Chair Company. He's one of those comedians where I also think it's really fun to recite the lines back to friends and to others. I think
very quotable.
Yeah, it's a comedy that has a lot of like second life. So that watching it the first time is fun and funny, but it's almost funnier 3 weeks later when you've been talking about it with your friends and you rewatch it and people are referencing it with memes and it sort of takes on a life of its own. And certainly, I mean, when it comes to memes, I think that's also been a big part of the popularity.
Yeah, I feel like people, even fans of Tim Robinson, younger fans, may not even know that he was sort of a failed SNL writer slash performer. He did not succeed on that show. He got very few sketches on the air. When he did, they were funny, but they were like probably a little too weird for the show. Then he goes to Netflix, makes his own sketch show with I Think You Should Leave, becomes hugely popular in a way that he never was on SNL. Why do you think he did strike a nerve, connect with people so much on Netflix in a way that he was not able to on this perhaps more mainstream, 50-year-old sketch show?
I think it's probably just because it allowed him to be himself sort of 100%.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live is hard for these performers to get on there and to define themselves, to delineate themselves from everybody else, and to, you read about it all the time, how they fight to get their sketches on the air. And it's very different if you get your own show and you get to star in 2/3 of the skits or sketches. I just think you got the full package of Tim Robinson, and he is a really unique guy. And it takes more than one sketch, I think, to really grasp what he's going for and the tone and the rhythm of it all. So I just think it took off. And plus, Netflix is just this enormous platform. As I've been saying to everybody, every time I talk to somebody, the first thing they want to talk about is, what are you watching on Netflix? Even more than the other streamers. And so
Really?
if you can get on Netflix, boy, that's like half the battle.
Yeah, so I mean that show I think is probably the biggest thing that he's done. I Think You Should Leave. He also did Detroiters with his good friend Sam Richardson on Comedy Central, and that was sort of more of an underground cult thing. He did, and I Think You Should Leave. The episodes are like 15 minutes long, and a lot of the sketches are like 1 to 2 minutes long. So he was sort of mastering this short form thing. So it's kind of surprising then that he has made a movie now in Friendship that you mentioned, co-starring Paul Rudd, which I liked but didn't love as much as I wanted to, I think. But I kind of want to see it more times because it probably gets funnier the more you watch it. But then The Chair Company is also like this totally different thing where it's serialized. It's a mystery. It has his brand of humor, but I think it also has this propulsive thing that wants you to watch the next episode. So I think that has also been interesting to see how he's sort of fit himself and his humor into these different formats without changing anything about who he is.
Yeah, I think about it somewhat like Adam Sandler. Not that Sandler doesn't make the same kinds of comedies now that he was making 30 years ago, but when he got to working with other people, they found ways to use his comedic persona in new ways or in new genres. Like Punch Drunk Love was the kind of thing where it took him as an angry, explosive, hot-headed man-child, but used it not for the same comedic purposes. And The Chair Company reminds me of that a little bit in that it's still Tim Robinson. He's still playing a Tim Robinson type. But as you said, the show is different in a lot of ways in terms of it being like a sort of serialized, conspiracy-minded mystery that has all these twists and turns and is not about just getting a punchline or two.
Yeah, and it has a great ensemble cast as well. Lake Bell, who we're talking to on this episode, gets to play his wife and is very much the straight woman opposite him. But then I also, there's just so many other little characters and people in there. Jim Downey, the legendary SNL writer, is in this show. Big year for Jim Downey. He was also in One Battle After Another. He had a documentary about him on Peacock. So that was very cool to see. Were there any other characters in this show that really stood out to you, or just people that you were drawn to?
Yeah, I mean, you named Jim Downey, who's really great in the show and in a very strange sort of subplot. But the one that I keep coming back to is the guy who I think who has gone sort of viral is the guy at the suit store, the salesman. The shirt store, yeah. The shirt store, excuse me, yeah, who is so sort of odd. Just odd, not crazy. Just the way he speaks, the cadence of his, the way he talks is so bizarre. And what was so funny was after the show, which I think he's funny in, you then saw interviews with him, and that's really him. He wasn't really
It's not
doing
an act.
Yeah, he wasn't doing shtick. That was just the way he is. And the idea that Tim Robinson's finding these people and throwing them into the mix is, it is not only just funny on the face of it, but I think speaks to some of the energy of the show, which is really sort of out of left field and unpredictable in a way that I think has made, certainly I Think You Should Leave and The Chair Company hits.
Yeah, I love the idea of Tim Robinson finding people that are so much weirder than him that it turns him into the straight man, and he's the normal guy in the scene because the other guy is so insane. I feel like if you have not watched this show, I'm hoping that we intrigue you, but it sounds describing it is too insane. But it's something that you have to experience. All right, well, Nick, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always love chatting about things like this.
And now we are going to go to my conversation with Lake Bell. Lake Bell, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see you.
It's great to see you too.
So with these interviews, what I really want to do is sort of start at the beginning. And because this is Obsessed, the podcast, we are going to ask first about something that you were obsessed with growing up as a kid. So what is the first piece of pop culture that you remember just being really obsessed with as a kid growing up?
Okay, yeah, that's an easy answer because I was obsessed with quite a few things. My first obsession, I think, was with Three's Company. There were reruns playing, and I felt like I was watching it for the first time. Like I thought I discovered it. So Three's Company was really indelible to me, just from a pop culture standpoint. There were also reruns of Carol Burnett show, just to kind of cue that clearly I grew up in the 80s, and those were the reruns that were going on. So that became another, TV, access to TV. My brother in his room, he had like a teeny tiny room because he's 6 years older than me. And my big brother had this like teeny tiny TV in his teeny tiny room. And I would sneak in there and be like, hey, can I come and see? And he, I'd watch all kinds of reruns there. And then he, being a bit older, was watching MTV. And so MTV became then yet another.
Yeah, I love the idea of reruns that we didn't know were reruns. For me, it was Saved by the Bell, which I thought was an after-school show. But then much later, I found out it was like actually on Saturday mornings or something. But I was always watching it in the afternoon, and they were apparently reruns, though I did not know that at the time.
Yeah, I know. There were a lot of reruns were a big part of our life. I feel like, Saved by the Bell. I also loved. What was another really All in the Family, Charles in Charge, Different Strokes, these were all kind of just friends of mine.
Was there a first performance that made you feel like you could really do this as a career? Like someone who you saw, we were like, yes, I feel like I could do that because it was relatable, or you felt some connection to it, something where you said, this is for me, this acting thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting because for whatever reason, and being such a little person, Carol Burnett was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing this grown up kind of perform these multifaceted characters, and that you didn't have to stay in one lane in order to kind of create story, and that was the first time I thought, oh, that is 100% what I want to do. And I think I was like 4,
Wow.
4 or 5. I knew very, very early that I wanted to tell stories and use my body and my brain and my voice to do so.
And was it comedy from the beginning that really drove you, do you think?
Comedy was definitely the starting place. I like the immediate feedback of, saying a funny and then getting the approval, I guess.
Yeah.
We as kids and little human beings, we do like that. We love that feedback loop, and it feels really good. But then I also felt like there was something kind of leveling about it. Like kids were just over there, and adults are over there, and there was something about, well, if I made you laugh, then all of a sudden I'm kind of invited to the party, I get to feel more adult because we're we're now we're in on a joke together, you know?
Right. Yeah. Once you started actually, acting, auditioning, all that, was there someone whose career you wanted? Was there someone who you were like, if I could have that career, that's what I would want to do?
I mean, it is very controversial because he is now not a celebrated person as a human. But if I'm
Right.
very frank with you, as a little girl, I grew up in New York City. And so as we would drive by, the bus would drive by, movie sets and things like that. And I would see Woody Allen shooting movies in the city. And, um, I have, I just, to answer the question, honestly, I think, being a little person and seeing that this comedic storytelling and just storytelling in general and being in front of the camera as well as behind the camera, that was the first person I had heard of that doing that. And of course,
Yeah.
those productions were happening all around me. So it just made sense that became a North Star for just a creative template.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think you ever appeared in a Woody Allen movie. Did you ever audition for him, or was there ever like one that
Yes,
you
I
were?
did audition for him, but I never appeared in one.
Yeah.
And
What was the movie that you auditioned for?
I'm trying to remember. What was the one? I think Lucy Punch got the role.
Ooh.
Yeah, it felt really like just getting to audition for one felt very kind of surreal because I had really obviously dreamt of it. But then I think, in making movies, I always told myself, I was like, it's okay. You just make your own, and you don't
Mhm.
have to be in his. You can just, allow for that to be, especially because of kind of his sort of merited fall from grace, given his personal
Yes.
life. I never understood that or was aware of it. And now as a grown up, I'm kind of like, well, you know what? I don't need to uh, worship this person anymore. In fact, he just really has fallen out of my reverence, and the art itself, the actual like architecture of how he crafted stories is still kind of something that's of interest.
It looks like that movie was called You Will Meet a Tall, Dark Stranger, which I have to admit I didn't catch that one.
Yes, that was it. And I did not get the role. But I'm thrilled that my dear friend Lucy Punch did.
And then, of course, there was In a World, which was your first big project that was all on you. As a writer, director, star, you finally got to do that thing that it sounds like you've been wanting to do for so long. What did it feel like to, get that opportunity? And was there a lot of pressure for you? Did you feel like to make it not only great, but sort of a success so that you could keep doing that kind of thing? Or how did you feel at the time?
At the time I felt very little pressure, to be honest. I had
Hmm.
written and directed a short, and I'll tell you why, because I had, first of all, not everybody was doing it. So it felt like novel and kind of, it was such low budget. It was low enough budget that it allowed for it to be an investment in something that could make or break, it could go either way and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And I had written and directed a short film that went to Sundance that I didn't star in, but that Michaela Watkins starred in. And that kind of proved I get to myself really that was something that I was ready to direct and that I wanted to. I mean, that's really the genesis of my career as a director. Which was first I had written In a World, didn't have a director to helm it. Shopped for a director, couldn't find a director. Then my agents were like, well, you said you always wanted to direct, so why not do this one? And I said, well, I would never direct something without having already directed something.
Yeah, but that's not how it works, right?
Yeah. and then Billy Lazarus, my agent, said, well, then write a short film, and direct that. And I was like, okay, I'll do it right now. So I'm a very fast writer, I will say that. I mean, I go through drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts, but generally speaking, I roll pretty fast. And I wrote that Worst Enemy short film, went to Sundance, so thrilled that I was like already in the mix,
Yeah.
and being in competition there and kind of getting to spread my wings a little bit in that way really validated. And then even just for my own confidence and understanding of how this creative endeavor works, that's what got me to say, okay, I'll direct in a world. And I did. And it changed my life. I directed another one, I Do Until I Don't, and it didn't hit as in the way that In a World did. And I was like, okay, I guess, I'm really part of the mix because, it's like in order to make movies, it's like you got to try things. You got to throw things to the wall. I really, obviously, I'm very biased, but of course, I really loved my second feature. But it does kind of, it kind of puts you in this position of like, oh God, now I got to make a third so I can get back on the pony ride.
Yeah. Do you think that's, I mean, they say that a lot about sort of like, female directors or directors of color, that the stakes are higher, sort of, they talked about, something like Bridesmaids, like if it hadn't hit, that it would have, like, the studios would have never made a movie about women again. Did you feel that at all with the second feature, not hitting?
I did with the second. Yeah. Cause it's like, I still haven't made my third original feature. And it's like, not for lack of trying. I have so many features that are sitting in this office, ready to go, that I'm still shopping. But of course we did get taxed with a global pandemic. So I really kind of came at it at an unfortunate time. And then it was like the writer's strike. So I felt like my third feature is going to it's just taking longer because of unforeseen circumstances. And it just doesn't deter my passion and my obsession with making original work.
So speaking of original work, I know you were not a creator on this, but I think we do have to talk about The Chair Company, which is one of the most original shows that I've seen in a very long time. And you're fantastic on it. This is, the Tim Robinson created show with
Zach Cannon.
On HBO. Were you friends or a fan of Tim Robinson before getting cast on this show? Like, how did you end up in this project as his character's wife, Barb?
So I was a huge fan of Tim Robinson. I by no means knew them. I had no speed dial to Tim Robinson and Zach Cannon. I heard about the project. I was very motivated to be seen, to put my hat in the ring for Barb. I feel like I would, I think as a creative, I was like, there's very few things that I read or that I have seen out there that feel really like you're in on something original in its tone, in how it moves through narrative. And so for that reason, I just got very obsessed with getting seen for it. And so I auditioned. I straight up was like, I will make a tape, and I think as an actor too and performer, where you have this opportunity to go into like the next chapter of the kind of characters you get to explore and bring to life. And so I really like the idea of this very different type of person where I'm from New York. I'm, I feel like, for it's like I read books about architecture on my off time. It's like, so I think that Barb is so lovely and relatable and measured, which I do relate to her because I am quite measured. And she's a woman of a certain age with grown children, with, in love with this man that she married like 20 something years ago, because they were like kids when they got married and had kids.
Yeah.
And they've known each other forever. And what she fell in love with him, the characteristics that she fell in love with him are the same characteristics that drive her crazy. And I felt like that was so universal and so wonderfully grounded in a show that is wild, and oftentimes surrealist, and bonkers. And it's so, and also, by the way, I loved Andy DeYoung's film Friendship. So that really added a spice to the sauce of my interest in the, why I wanted to participate so much. I just thought the whole thing is going to come together beautifully. The cinematographer is of great note, Ashley Connors. And yeah, I knew that this was going to be something that I would cherish and watch, and need in a time where we just want original thought.
Your character is so interesting in the show because there is so much bonkers insanity happening. You have to be this sort of grounded, straight woman character opposite Tim Robinson's absolute insanity. So is there a secret to that? What kind of conversations did you have with, the director, Andrew DeYoung, or with, Tim and Zach about what you needed to do to make this work? Because if you're matching his energy, that's not right.
No, it won't work.
Like you can't be in a totally different show either. So it seems like there's some challenge there.
It is challenging, but I think that ultimately, I've been doing this for so long. And so I think when you're a comedic actor, you have built into your repertoire the understanding of how to be a straight woman, how to be the straight man, because nothing works unless you have that. So I think that I just, in the same way that I can play in a lot of genres, like in a way I'm kind of like in a drama, Yeah. And that's ultimately when I play a straight woman, I think of it as a drama. In general, in comedy, I tend to think of, I think of it as like grave and very serious. And if it's grave and very serious, then everything else around it can be absolute tornado madness. And, I feel like there is a trust in me with the creative team that they understand that I will stay level and that I will ground that so that Tim can go absolutely off his rocker and, I will be unflappable. And that is a fun game to play.
Yeah, that sounds fun. It also sounds difficult in the sense of keeping it together, not breaking.
I have broke. I admit that. Okay.
Was there the hardest scene to not break in, or was there one where
it's
you
usually
just
like very simple stuff?
Really?
Oh yeah, I think there was in the pilot. He says, is this pillow made of rocks or something? Like I have the worst pillow in the whole world or something, and that was an improvised line. And so but when he's just trying to get to sleep, and we're just people in the world, married, husband and wife, in our bed, and I'm normal, and you're normal, you're supposed to be normal, and I'm just telling myself, we're normal people. We're in this bed, and we're going to bed, and it's in the middle of the night, And he does the first take, and it's at, medium Ron. And then it's like they let him go to full test Ron. And that's when, Tim really, he goes bonkers. And I call it the tornado, because then he literally is tossing and turning. He takes the duvet cover and twirls around like he's a burrito and takes all of the covers off of me. And I am trying to just say, I remember turning and being like, is it your tummy? Do you need something? Do you need some water or something? Is it, like as small as possible to antidote his massiveness. And I was like, I had to turn away from the camera because there was just something so absurd about the way in which we're in the dark and the way that, in the middle of the night, he just can't get comfortable, and the simplicity of the way which by the way, Tim is kind of a fucking genius. Like it's just
kind of,
I mean, I almost feel like embarrassed for it because he's very humble, and doesn't like that kind of, hyperbole. So that's why I think I kind of, but yeah, he's a genius. He's a comedic um, he's an original magic maker, of this kind
Yeah.
of comedic.
Doing something that no one else could do
Yeah.
or would do.
And
Yeah.
that's really what makes it like alternative. It's like it is an alternative to anything I've ever done. Like when I'm in something like a Nancy Meyers movie or, these big studio movies, there's something clean, crisp, and really satisfying, in the way that kind of comedic narrative rolls out, right? Like it feels good. You kind of when it comes, you kind of expected it and it feels really satisfying. And I know how to do that, like with my eyes closed, and I think what's really fun, being in more irreverent and alternative comedic spaces, like even Children's Hospital, where we fuck around and find out a little bit too, and Wet Hot American Summer,
Yeah.
and all these different comedy troupes. And now with Tim and Zach, it's like there's just this different flavor. And it's like you get to play in a different genre, even though it is still comedy.
Do you feel like it inspires you in terms of the work that you want to make and how you might take chances that you wouldn't otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. I think, part of how I learned to write and direct and perform, the best training is to do, right? And so to be exposed to different creative makers. And so, being with just looking at how Andy and Ashley were moving the camera and how they're composing a frame and, when to use handheld or not, all these things. I'm like, oh, I see. I like how they landed the plane there, and that becomes part of my training. It's like, as an actor, I get to sit front row and I get to be inside of the machine that I'm actually studying.
Yeah. I don't know if you went into this project knowing or hoping that there would be a season 2. Now we know that there will be. The show is so out of control. It ends in such an insane way that it's like, I don't know what to expect from the second season. I don't know how much you know, but do you have sort of hopes or expectations for this next season for your character, Barb? Like, what are you hoping to get to do in this second season?
Yeah, it's so funny because you're like, I don't know what they're going to do for the second season. And I'm like, I know, me too. Like, I also don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, it's, I got to be honest, like, I have no idea. And I couldn't be more excited about it because I think it's like when you go on a roller coaster and, part of the fun of the roller coaster is like, you don't know what's coming next,
Yeah.
And so I feel a little bit like I'm just going to strap on and like jump out, and just like jump out of the plane, because it just feels, even with the scripts that would come in, they even asked me, they said, would you like to see the episodes before they come out so that you can kind of speak to them? And I was like, no, I want it because I'm not in all of it. I'm just in like pockets of it. So I can really experience it as a viewer as well. Yeah. So it was really, really fun for me to have that experience.
Yeah. There's like this whole world happening outside of your storyline that you don't know about, which helps, right?
Yeah. Cause I would try not to be too involved in and try to keep up with what was going on so that I could be very much in the dark, which is what Barb needed. And then it was just so funny and kind of unique experience to watch the show and get to enjoy it with everyone else, And then I'd be like, oh, I'm in there. Okay. I'm in the
Yeah, it's like you're just watching it. You forget that you're in the show.
Yeah, totally. And they're like, oh my God. I'm the mom wife. But yeah, I'm excited to see where Barb goes and wherever Pump goes, her breast pump company.
Oh yeah.
And now the financing. So there's just a lot going on.
Exciting. So now we're going to do some questions sort of reflecting on your career. And I wanted to start with, what would you go back and tell yourself when you were just starting out? Is there a piece of advice or something you wish you had known when you were starting out in show business?
Keep writing. Writing is your gateway, You know what I mean? If I knew that younger, I think I was also recording things so much. I kind of did things. I used to carry a video camera around when I was like a kid, like the second I was
Very,
allowed
very
to.
cool.
Yeah, and I was like that kid, and I did it all through my childhood, boarding school into college, and then when I moved to LA. But I think I was a little more nervous to be a writer initially, because I was always writing prose, more like short stories and things like that. And so I didn't think, oh God, I could write a screenplay. But so it took me a beat to do that. I think I was like in my 20s, like early 20s. But I feel like it would have been fun to start earlier with that confidence, I guess.
How did it feel to get recognized once that started happening for you?
Even to this day, it's like I feel like I achieved exactly the amount of recognition that is humane. Do you know what I mean?
You can go to the grocery store.
Yeah, like I go to the grocery store, I'm on the subway, I can walk anywhere, and I'm totally fine. Whilst I have friends who it's like, that would be an utter nightmare. They can't go to the grocery store, or they can, but not with a whole, it would be a whole to do. And then I have some friends who don't give a shit, and they're going to go to the grocery store regardless of the whole to do. And either way, I can just say, especially as a parent, that like I'm very grateful that I can move through the world and do all the things that I would want to do as a parent without feeling like there's a big, like it's putting a tax almost on the people around me. You know what I mean? There's a certain level of fame that's like, that it's then all of your family member, everybody's got this big tariff they have to carry,
Have you had the experience of being out with a more famous friend and sort of like watching that happen?
Yeah, I mean, my whole life, my whole career. Yeah, I'll be like, oh God, I'll take the picture. Like I'll take the picture. Like, and it's fun because I think, it's just all silly to me. It doesn't feel dangerous, as it were, because it can feel so for me, it's just kind of funny when I'm with my kids, they're kind of like, did that person know you? And now they know, and I'll be like, no. So Mom, what I do for a living is that I'm in movies and TV. And so sometimes people go, oh, I recognize you from that movie. And they're like, oh, I'm like, that's just my job. And so it's unusual. And they're like, okay, that's weird.
Is there a surprising thing that people tend to recognize you from or always want to ask you about or anything like that?
For some reason, TSA only, like the only time I ever get recognized in TSA, they like all watch Children's Hospital, which I find really interesting because it's been consistent. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's bite size and it's comedy and it's funny and it's irreverent and it's quick, but I have like nobody ever compliments me about Children's Hospital unless I'm in an airport going through security. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm always like, the thing that I find hilarious is out of nowhere, it's like out of the whole thing, everything I've done over 15, 20 years at this point. And then someone's like, I just love Boston Legal. I'm like, what? Like I don't even remember being on that show.
Yeah. And like, can you even find that anywhere now?
I don't know, but it's like, like someone this year was like, oh, I just love you in Boston Legal. I'm like, I feel like offended almost. Like, can you?
That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, thank you. But also like, I've done a lot since then, but then I'm like, move on. Who cares?
Is there a story from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
Yes, only 100. Yeah, I mean, on the set of It's Complicated, my first day of fucking shooting was almost the last scene of the movie for me, which was, so it really sucks when you have to do it out of chronology,
Yeah.
you're just kind of like, oh God, I don't even know his character yet. Like I got to figure this out. And in that movie, it's complicated. It's with America's Meryl Streep
Of
and
course, yes.
Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin. And it's the four of us in a conversation where Meryl and Steve are playing high on weed.
Yes, great
And
scene.
yes, it's a great scene. And I'm there with Alec, my husband, and I'm supposed to be very high status as Agnes. And and I think I have to say to her something like, I see that you're having an aha moment. I say that like very condescending to Meryl. Now, I have not met Meryl at this point. So I had just gotten, and I was like, I said to the script supervisor, I said, listen, can we run lines? Because right after the rehearsal, Meryl was having fun with Steve. And I was like, oh my God, and I asked the script supervisor, I said, listen, first of all, let's run the lines. Second of all, if Meryl improvises, because I know Nancy doesn't like to, go off book, which was also really terrifying because I quite like to improvise. I think part of my thing is I like to kind of make it my own a little bit. Obviously very capable of not doing that. However, I think I like to add a little mess. That's kind of my thing. Okay. Anyway, I knew why I was there. I knew how to do what I needed to do. But then I said, what if like Meryl is improvising? And the script supervisor said, was she improvising? She shouldn't be. Okay, hang on. Let me just go tell her what the lines are. Does she not know the lines? I go, no, stop it. Get back to her. Get back. Go. She was like, no, I'll let her know that. I was like, she might need to know the lines. I was like, she knows the lines. It's Meryl Streep. Come back. Please come back. Please come back. And so I was like, I inadvertently like caught, I felt like I'm going to die. And then additionally, when I did do the scene, I was so in awe of Meryl and so just excited to look at her face and her mouth moving. And Nancy Meyers who I'm very good friends with to this day, took me aside and she goes, we weren't close then. She just was like, hey, Bobby, you need to get it together. You need to, she was like, Agnes, you're Agnes. Okay. I need you to like, you're way up here. You're supposed to be talking down to her, or whatever she said. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired off this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm definitely getting fired. I'm getting fired right now. And then I didn't get fired and I got my shit together and, it was, and now I totally ended up being like really friendly with Meryl and her family, and she's so gracious and awesome.
Amazing.
And just so fun to watch. I still to this day, I just look at her face. I just love her face.
That's great. If listeners could watch only one thing that you've made, what should it be? What would be the one unmissable thing that people should watch from your career?
I mean, Shamelessly in a World.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other unmissable thing is TBD, because I'll tell you when I get money for my next third feature.
Yep.
And we could come back and talk about it again. But yeah, I mean, as the crow flies, I want you to go back in time and watch In a World.
And on top of the great movie and the legacy of it, you also are responsible for a marriage with that movie.
I am responsible for a marriage. Yeah. I cast Tig Notaro's love interest in The Great Stephanie Allen, and she and Tig are now togetherness
That's
forever.
pretty
They
cool.
have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You did that.
I know. I spoke in their wedding. Very proud.
Is there anything from your career that you think people should miss?
I mean, look, you know what? I dare you to go deep dive into my fucking IMDb, and I dare you to watch some of the early hits.
Finally, what is one piece of pop culture that is unmissable right now that you're obsessed with?
The Chair Company.
Of course, The Chair Company.
I'm going to be frank with you. I actually think The Chair Company is something that people need to see. And if you're like, it's pop culture, it's in the cultural zeitgeist. It is fresh, exciting, bizarre, and scratching itches you didn't know you had.
Yes, I agree. All 8 episodes of The Chair Company are streaming now on HBO Max. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. Lake Bell, thank you so much for being here and doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm obsessed.
See, you said obsessed enough that now we're going to have to use that in the promos. You
I know.
that, right?
I'm aware.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I did that purposely.
Okay.
I want to
You're a
insert
pro.
myself as much as possible.
This was so great. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, that was so much fun. I am loving how obsessed Lake Bell is with this podcast, and I am obsessed with that story she told about Meryl Streep on the set of It's Complicated. If you haven't seen that movie, please do check it out. Also, subscribe to Obsessed the Podcast on YouTube. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us ratings, reviews, comments. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you think about the show. I want to thank our producers, Devin Rogerino and Rachel Passer. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you next time.